Welcome back to another episode of Writing with Authors. I'm your host and three-time published author, Vincent A. Lanci.
I'm Derrick Bliss. I'm also an author and a CEO of a digital marketing company. So I wear a few different hats, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Derrick, thanks for coming on. Today's guest is someone I met when I was asked to be a guest on his podcast a year or two ago. One of my college friends, Matt, worked for Derrick's company and he forged this relationship. But now Derrick is an author and an entrepreneur streaming from New York. He runs his own company, as he said, Thump Local, where they focus on establishing and building a superior web presence for your business. He also just published his new book, which is what made me reach out to him to bring him on this new show, Time Nova, for his third book. Is someone trying to alter the outcome of pivotal historic events? Join Welly, an unconventional tech tycoon, and his teenage son, Kyle, on their dysfunctional and thought-provoking journey through space and time from 2050s Brooklyn to the 1700s in colonial America. Discover the true power of thought and find out if history and the future that follows will be changed forever. That was a little preview to Time Nova, so allow me to now introduce Derrick Bliss. Derrick, it's great to catch up again, and thank you for coming on this platform.
Yeah, it's definitely great to catch up again, and I really appreciate not only that you're having me on this program. I really do appreciate that, but I also appreciate that you're doing this program because I think a lot of the things that you've been doing and you've been producing so much great content and helpful stuff for people. But particularly for writers, I think this is a really great idea to have different writers from different walks of life, different genres, discussing, the craft, so to speak. I think is really going to be helpful for a lot of people, including myself. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for the kind words. It's exciting. I've had people being interviewed that do short stories. Now we have someone with your book. It's just getting a whole bunch because it's not as easy as just picking up a pen and writing and thinking that you're going to write a book just then and there. So we're going to get into it now. I'd like to start with a little more introduction of yourself, Derrick. Get yourself a little more familiar with our listeners, and then we'll dive in and get going to talk about your writing.
Okay, sure. So I'm Derrick Bliss. I'm born and raised on Long Island, New York, and I just I guess I have sort of a passion for creating in general. I like to create things that weren't there before, whether those are companies. I've created a few different companies. Like you said, I'm currently managing and running one of them, but I've had a few others that I've started, created, and I don't think I'm done there yet as well. And I I like to be in tune with my imagination as much as possible. And when I get inspired, whether that's in business or in writing for an adventure or a cool new idea, I kind of feel compelled to act on it. So that's, I guess, why I'm here today.
Well, speaking of acting on these ideas, I guess we'll have to ask what acted you to start Time Nova? Let's discuss your latest project.
Wow. Well, how much time do you have? But yeah, Time Nova. So the book, I started writing the book over 6 years ago. Okay. So it was really a journey. There's a journey throughout the book, but it was a journey to really, get the whole story put together. I left it. I walked away from it. It was so complex, but something kept pulling me back. I might leave for 6 months or a year, and then something kept pulling me back to it. But and then finally, I finished it just recently. But it takes you into deep space. It takes place in Brooklyn, 2052, and much of the communication and operation of devices is now being powered by thought. People are using their mind power. They're honing and utilizing and unlocking more and more of the powers that basically are inside of our mind. And there's a reason why we're advancing so quickly in such a short period of time. But essentially, it's discovered that out in deep space, between galaxies, basically, there is what was thought to be a supernova, like an exploding star, because of the light that finally reached Earth. But it really turns out it's this great, ever expanding timekeeper that's sort of recording every single event in all of the cosmos. And other beings apparently can go in and out, and they use it as a sort of a fountain of knowledge where you can go through it to a certain time and learn about historical events and kind of learn about history. And at that time in the future, we have space tourism now that can take the ultra wealthy through to witness historical events from, like, a really safe distance up in the sky. And from there, kind of the leader in this space, the space tourism, the the thought power
That's
space.
pretty cool.
Yeah, he ultimately it ends up that somebody starts to tamper, which is a very serious crime. But they're tampering with historical events, namely events in the American Revolution,
Wow.
to try to alter the outcome. And Welly and his son end up on this adventure and this journey, and they have it's a tough relationship. It's really a lot of a father-son journey. He's a widower. Kyle lost his mother, and there's a lot of tension, and there's a lot of dynamics at play. It's a family story, I would say, at its heart. Maybe family versus technology. But it's a pretty cool adventure, I think. So I definitely am excited for people to check it out.
Well, I got to ask, which time period was your favorite time period to write?
Great question. So I mean, I had some fun with imagining the future and what kind of cool maybe gadgets and gizmos kind of thing would exist, and they're in the book for sure. And how would people be living? What things would be a little different? So I explore that.
That's cool.
But the idea that I got to kind of really dive into history, and I really got to kind of take my mind and journey to the 1700s, and sort of really do a lot of research and get to sort of experience the American Revolution in sort of a mental type of way. For me, I love that stuff. I love history and diving into that. So it's a close call, but I would have to say the colonial America. That was the cool part about it.
So speaking of ancient time, going back in time, what led you to becoming a published author at first, Derrick?
Oh wow. I guess I dive into this in this book. It deals a lot with thought and the power of thought, and tries to explain where does thoughts come from. But for me, that's a really fascinating thing, because these thoughts kind of come and they sail into you from I don't know exactly where, but when they do, and sometimes they come sort of kind of complete and whole, and sometimes it's just when you're driving down the road and they're there. So these ideas came to me, and I really just felt compelled to write them. And once I started, it was sort of like just you get the snowball going, and it just starts rolling on its own. And I found that it was something that I just enjoyed. So having the story be complete in a novel form, taking the great idea and really making it have a good, start, middle, end, and sort of, it's never really finished. I say you kind of feel like that,
Right.
but at least saying, okay, I did this, I can move on to the next project. It was more important, and is more important, I think, for me right now, than being published, so to speak. But I definitely want people to check out my stuff. I'm not going to say I don't, but fleshing out and realizing the idea in its full potential, or at least as much as I could do as a human, to the best of my ability. That's really what drives me.
I'm excited to check it out. We're going to talk after the episode because I had the new book come out as well. Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health. And I definitely need a book that is off business topic, I could say. I try to read self-help books and things. I just picked up a new book from David Jennings. He's on my podcast this week. He talks about systems and business, and I'm a big believer in the systems throughout my day. So definitely looking forward to checking out Time Nova. Derrick, what led you to the second book?
The second book. So I'm just trying to think now in the proper order. That was inspired by, I think, just being out in the work world and seeing a lot of, interesting and sometimes just, I don't know, comical, aspects of, corporate life and just kind of going through, companies and sales and things like that. And I thought it would be fun to kind of write a completely fictionalized version of, something like that. And that was much different than anything I've done. It's sort of a satire. The second book I put out, Pieces of Yellow, it's there's not a whole lot of drama. It's kind of a comedy, but I just again I just thought it would be fun, and I pretty much wrote that entire book on the Long Island Railroad, sitting, as I used to commute back and forth to the city, and I would just write longhand, and I wrote, filled up notebooks longhand, and then eventually, kind of edited it down and typed it out, and yeah, so.
Sounds like a true writer here. From all your writing experiences here, Derrick, what two pieces of advice can you give our fellow group of writers?
Yeah, so well, if you're thinking about writing, because I definitely, when you have books out there or you've written some stuff, people start to say, I'd really love to write a book, or I really want to do that. And I guess my first piece would be from Zig Ziglar, who I think really, he meant it in terms of business or sales, but I think it's applicable to writers. And it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
I love that one as well.
Yeah, so I mean, that's for me very true. It's like, if you're thinking about writing or you have an idea and it's, you're not really confident in it or your abilities, just go.
Mhm.
Just go. Let the wind carry you. Just start writing, and all of a sudden you'll see a magical thing happen. It will just start to pour out of you, and when it stops pouring, I don't know, take a break, have a cup of coffee, come back later. But definitely take that first step in your journey, I think.
Great
Would be
advice. I remember writing my first book, Left for Dead. I had
Good
6
book.
words for like 6 months, it felt like 6 pages slowly. And then all of a sudden, once the ball got rolling and I got that momentum, as you said, it poured out. What's another piece of advice you got for us?
And by the way, I read that book, and your story is amazing.
Thank
And it's just you're an inspiration. You're constantly, pumping out all this creative stuff and helpful stuff. And again, I appreciated that, and I definitely would recommend people checking out that book.
I appreciate it.
So I guess I don't know, other reading a lot. If you're going to be a writer, read a lot, and you'll start to you'll just start to kind of recognize the melody or the harmony, and what's kind of working and what isn't. For me as a reader, I really like a lot of story in my story. I like a lot of action. I like a lot of things happening, dialogues, and for me, I enjoy less detail because I want to use my imagination. I got a decent imagination, and I want to participate in the story. So I would say my second bit is, read a lot, and try to provide more action and more story than you do details. Give me a little details. I'll color in the rest, because that's part of the for me, one of the joys of reading is kind of developing, much of what isn't there in my own mind. So don't feel like you got to go too crazy on details. I guess it's probably different if you're doing a nonfiction. I don't really know. I haven't done really much nonfiction, but I'm just saying for fiction in particular.
I feel like that's something that's acquired as you write more and more and more. You have the ability to keep the reader guessing, keep them on the edge of their seat. Any advice you have for our listeners out there who are maybe trying to build that skill up a little more?
Yeah, I mean, definitely right, and then definitely don't be afraid to cut up. Yeah, I know it's difficult, but the advice and from what I've read is, pour out everything that you have, and then kind of take a break for a little while, step away, come back to it when it seems a little bit like a foreign object that maybe you didn't even necessarily recognize, and then do your editing. But um, be confident that you can be a little light on detail because your readers are very they're very smart and capable, and they are happy to bring their imagination to the table. So don't feel like you have to have control over every single aspect and make sure they're seeing exactly what you're seeing. You guys might see a little differently. And that's okay.
Great advice there, Derek. Would you mind now, please, taking the time to share your website, social media, ways to find your books, get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm pretty much a mess on social media, but I have on Instagram. It's either at Derrick Bliss or at Derrick J Bliss. Both accounts I update. You can go to derrickbliss.com. And for the book, it's available in print, in ebook, audiobook just came out, on Audible or audiobooks.com. Really just Google Time Nova, and you'll probably be like the first things that pop up. You can, hopefully check it out, and I really hope you do enjoy the journey.
Would you now please also share the name of your first two books?
Oh yeah, sure. So the first one was Drew the Path. So that's kind of a totally different, sort of a drama coming of age story that takes you to an underground world and a kind of a society that nobody knows about. The second one is Pieces of Yellow, and again, that's about a young man kind of having an interesting and quirky journey through corporate America in New York City, and then of course, yeah, the latest Time Nova.
Be sure to check out some of those books, whether you are an aspiring writer or a current author, a three-time published author like Derek. His writing can definitely give you some inspiration and fuel. Derek, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I will
Thank
see
you
you
so much.
all on the next episode of Writing with Authors.
Thanks, Vincent. I appreciate it.
See you, Derek.